Hi, I'm Kim with Kolme Group, and our team helps PMOs achieve success through data-driven decision making. We're also premier implementation partner for Clarizen, which is our favorite PPM tool. And today, we are going to share one of our favorite pro tips to make Clarizen even more user-friendly than it already is. Today, we're going to learn about smart buttons. All kinds of great buttons today. Officially, this functionality isn't called Smart Buttons because it doesn't technically have a name, but Smart Buttons is a really good description for what we're going to do, so let's go with it. We're going to use a little snippet of custom CSS code and some configuration in Clarizen to create dynamic smart buttons that you can use a lot of different ways. Smart buttons might look a little complicated, but don't worry, they are super simple and have a ton of great uses. So let's take a look. Here I can click on my smart button and it moves my progress on my phase and dynamically tells me what the next thing is that's going to happen. That's a smart button. We can also use it to tell us when something needs to be done. So I'll open up my big whopping project here. And you can see I have smart buttons on the right here to tell me when risks need to be updated. And when I do my update, they dynamically go away. So buttons can be smart and they tell me when I need to do something and what that something is going to be. Now, before we jump in, I want to welcome you to Kolme University's Clarizen Mini-Masterclass and let you know that we'll have a link at the end of this video or in the notes below, depending on where you're looking at this video, where you can download sample code that we're going to show you today, plus a checklist that walks you through the configuration steps that we're going to take you through in this video. You'll also want to sign up to be notified when we release more videos and tools just like this one. So let's get started. Prerequisites for this course include, of course, you need a Clarizen 1 environment where we're going to be doing our configurations, and we recommend that you do this in a sandbox or some other demo environment. You'll also need to have administrative access into that sandbox environment. As far as your skills go, they are pretty basic for this course. You need to understand how to create a custom field and reference a custom action. You need to be able to add fields to views and property cards, and you need to be able to at least follow the logic of a Clarizen 1 case statement and if statement. Don't worry, you don't have to create these yourself. You just need to be able to follow the logic when we walk through them. First, let's take a look at life without smart buttons. Here in my demo environment, I have a list of my projects, and I have a custom action that advances the project through the different phases. For example, this project is in initiation phase. If I want to advance it, I can click to select that project, and then I can go to the Actions ribbon, Custom Action, and move it to the next phase, clicking my Next Phase button. And that works pretty well. And this is just an example, but it demonstrates that as powerful as custom actions are in Clarizen, there are a couple ways we might be able to improve them. First of all, it doesn't tell you when it's time to click this button or what will happen specifically when you click it. It just says next phase, regardless of whatever the next phase is. Additionally, they're not in context. So if I want to run this next phase action, I have to go over here and I have to select the project or projects that I want to apply it on. And then I have to click it. It's not in context down here in the row. What would be much more intuitive for my users is if the button, this next phase button, was in context in each one of these lines, in each one of these rows. And it's little things like that that can really make the difference for usability and user adoption. But how do we do that? How do we take this button out of the Actions ribbon and put it in context and make it smart where it can tell me what the next step is that's going to happen when I click that button? Now, how would you use this? Well, you could maybe store the website for a customer here, or you could use a formula to create a more interesting link programmatically to another system in your environment. You could store a link to a customer site here. There's a few things that you can do that. Key is that you can use a formula to create a more interesting link programmatically, which is what we're going to do today. The key thing is this. The field that can act like a button is what this is. I can click on it and something happens. So anywhere I can put a field, I can put a button basically. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's start by creating a custom URL field. I'm going to go to Settings, Configuration, and we will drill down to Project, Create New Custom Field. The field type will be a URL, as we've talked about. And we're going to populate this URL field using a formula because we're going to make it a programmatic smart button. We're going to call it Action. Now let's put together the calculation for our button. We're going to populate it with a URL. So what we're going to use is the Clarizen hyperlink function. If I go to my right, I select Functions, and I scroll down to Hyperlink. On the right, I can see an example of the syntax. And if I want some more information on the syntax, I can click See Sample, and it will pop me straight over to the Clarizen Success site where I can read a lot more about the syntax and see an example. We're going to double click to add a hyperlink to our formula. Now, here's one of the really powerful things about Clarizen configuration. So remember our custom action that we used earlier. Let me jump back over to it. And that was next phase. Well, Clarizen lets you call this custom action and really any custom action from a URL. So this button actually behind it has a hyperlink that you can click to activate this custom action, just like you would type into your browser. This means that you can say, send an email to somebody with a hyperlink that takes you straight into this custom action. Or you can embed this custom action as a URL on the landing page on your web page. The fact that these custom actions can be accessed directly from a URL opens up a ton of possibilities. Now, for today, we're going to get the hyperlink of this specific custom action and stick it in our URL field and call it like it's a button over here. Let's go through that process. So going back to our settings and our custom field here, we're going to add a hyperlink. Now, for the URL, we want to find out what the hyperlink is for that custom action. To do that, I'm going to use a function called get custom action URL, and that does exactly what it says. It gets the URL of our custom action. So I'm going to get the hyperlink of our custom action. And here I'm going to type in the name of our custom action, which is, in quotes, next phase. And again, if I want to see some more of the syntax for this action, I can click See Sample. And this will take me straight to the success site where I can see some examples. We won't need that because I'll show you how to do that. So our first parameter is going to be the name of the custom action. And then the parameter I want to use is I want to use get runtime parameter. And that parameter is going to be the current object. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this because Clarizen lets us call a custom action and tell it which custom action or which object we should run that custom action on. In this case, I want it to run on the currently selected object. So now I'm going to enter a title for this, and let's just call it Move to Next Phase in single quotes. And there we go. Just to break this down, the first part of this is the hyperlink command. There's hyperlink. And the first part of that function defines what is the URL, like google.com, but in this case, it'll be the URL of our custom action. And the last part of this function is what is the text description on the action itself. Click check syntax, no errors. So I'm going to go ahead and apply to save this. All right, My field is created. So if I go to my projects, I'm going to refresh this. And in this view, I'm going to go to Settings, Columns, and I'm going to add that column I just created called Action. And I'll move it to the very top. And let's see what we have. You can see here I have a hyperlink that takes that. If I click this, it will perform the action, which what should happen is it should move this to the next phase. Let's try it. Click on that link. And it moved from build to QA. So that's working, but it's still maybe not optimal because although it's in context, it doesn't look like a button. It just looks like a link, which as a user, I might think that could take me to another page. So the next step is to turn these URL fields into buttons. So let's talk about how we do that. Now, you may not know this, but you can customize the CSS in the web page on your Clarizen 1 instance. In this case, I'm going to add the CSS that turns hyperlink fields into buttons. To do this, I'm going to go to my settings, right-click that, open as a new tab. And here in my global settings down below, I can see I have this field called Custom CSS. So I can click in here and I can paste it. If you go to this webpage and you don't see Custom CSS down here, it might be a hidden field. You can still find it by going to Properties and type in CSS. And there's our field. What we're going to do today is we're going to paste in some special button code. And at the end of this video, you'll have a link, or down below the video, you can click on that link, sign up, and you can download this custom CSS as well as the package configurations for everything we're going to walk through today. Now I'm going to paste our CSS code here. And you see here it's labeled as the URL to button code. Again, don't worry about trying to get this from the video. Sign up at the end and we'll send you a copy of all this. I click OK. And now we're looking pretty good. So let's close some of our extra tabs here. And we're back at our project grid. Let me do a quick refresh here, and you should see that our action button is now displayed as a button. Resize that a little bit. There we go. Pretty cool. Now, when I click this button, move to next phase, watch what happens to our phase. It will advance it to the next phase. And I can click in context for any one of these objects, and it moves it along to the next phase. That's pretty cool, but I think we can make this smarter and dynamically change the text on the button to show what the button is going to do when I click it. In this case, let's maybe display what the next phase is that it's going to show. So when I click it, it'll say, okay, what's the next phase that we're going to advance to? To do this, let's go back to our custom field, action. I'll go to settings, configurations. So now we have our action field that we just created, our URL field. And remember, what we want to do is we want to change the text that's displayed on the button to be dynamic. Right now, it's a static piece of text, move to next phase. We want to make this a little smart. So I'm going to edit this field. And just to make this a little bit easier to read, I'm going to add a line break here and a line break here. So I want to replace this static text with something dynamic. Now, I've already written this, so I'm going to simply paste it here. It's a case statement. So let me walk through what the case statement does and how it works. I have a case, and if condition 1 is true, then I'm going to show the result. Condition 2, result. Condition 3, result. So in this case, I'm going to look at what is the value of phase. Phase is a pick list, so the first thing I have to do is convert that into a string or a piece of text that I can compare with. And if the phase is equal to initiation, on the button, I'm going to display move to planning. If the current phase is planning, I'm going to display on the button, move to build, and so on and so forth through all of my different phases. And my last case here, you see this one's a little different. This is my default statement. If none of these are true, what do I do? Well, I'm going to show nothing on the button because there's probably nothing I can do with the button. And so I click check syntax. It all checks out. So I will click apply to apply my changes. Once it's saved, let's go back to our view. We probably need to refresh, but you can see, now I can see for each one of these, what's going to happen when I click this button. I'm in implementation phase. And when I click the button, move to pilot, it moved the phase to pilot. Down here, I'm in planning. And when I click move to build, it moves the phase to build, and so on and so forth. So now we have a dynamic button. And the great improvement to the user interface is that as a user, when I log in here, I don't need to really know anything about going into action ribbon or anything like this. I just know when I look at this, if I click this button, it's very intuitive. I click that, it's going to move to build. It tells me exactly what it's going to do. So that's a great user interface improvement. Let's maybe take it one step further. And that's this. So as I go through my phases, I'm going to move to rollout. Now, when I move to closure and then click move to closed, I move to a closed phase, but my project is still in an active state. I have another custom action that says close project. And when I click on that, it marks the project in a closed state. You can see now that it's completed. What I want to do now is when I move this into a closed phase, I want this to also change the state to completed. So what that means is not only am I making the text dynamic, but I'm making the action executed when this is clicked dynamic. Let's take a look and see how that works. Going back to our custom field, we want to modify this part that chooses which custom action is executed. I want to keep this easy to read, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another line break here and one right here, because this is the statement, the function that I want to modify and make conditional. And the name of the other custom action I want to call is called close project. So what I'll do is I'm going to use an if statement. So I'm going to say if my phase equals closed, then I'm going to get custom action URL. I'm going to copy and paste that. Except the custom action I'm going to call if the phase is closed is going to be, let's look at the name of it, close project. Otherwise, if the phase is not closed, then I'm going to call the original one that I was using. And let's close that off with a bracket, check syntax, and that should do it. So let me walk through what we're going to do again. This is all enclosed in a hyperlink. We have to convert whatever we're doing into a hyperlink that Clarizen can display. And as far as the function I'm going to call, if the current phase is closed, then I'm going to call this custom action that's going to mark the state of the project as closed. Otherwise, I'm going to advance this project to the next phase. And then through the process, I'm going to go ahead and display the next phase that we would be advancing to. So let's try it out. I'm going to apply those changes. So let's pick Project IOTA. Right now we're in build. We're going to move it to Q&A. Now we're going to move it to implementation, move it to pilot, move it to rollout, move it to closure, and move to closed. And finally, I'm going to change the state to completed and change this to active, from active to completed, and There we go. Now we could make this more sophisticated and hide this button altogether after we're moved into a completed state, but we're just going to keep it simple for today's class. Now we could get really creative here and extend this to use the phase to set the project to requested, draft, or active or closed state, like we've done here. You could add some validation rules that prevents anyone from changing the state directly. You could even control who has the authority to click this button and when they can do it. You can even set different phase progressions for different project types. So different departments using Clarizen, they can have completely different set of phases and a different set of progressions. We'll cover those in a future masterclass. Now, not only can we add buttons into a grid view, we can also add buttons into property cards. For example, let's take a closer look at Project Chi. I can embed buttons anywhere I can put a field, so I can put buttons right here in the property card. Let's show you how we do that. I'm going to go back to my settings here. Go to Profiles. I'm going to go to my administrator profile where I'm working in. I'm going to go Project, Field Layout, and I'm going to go to my property card. This is how I adjust the layout for my property card. And so here is my phase button. I think I'd like to put my button to advanced phase right next to that field. So first let me find my action field. I'm going to put that right next to it. And I have this little white space I'm going to get rid of. So I go status, phase, and action. Save that. Go back here and I'm going to refresh this view. And now you see I have my button embedded directly in my property card. So when I'm in my detailed view, I see I'm in planning phase. When I'm ready, I can click move to build, move me to the build phase, and so on. And I can embed that, as we've shown, anywhere we want to, anywhere in our grids. Even in the side panels, we can embed buttons right down over here. So let's do a quick review. For smart buttons, first thing you need to do is sign up at the link you'll find at the end of this video or down below so you can download the configuration files. Most importantly, you'll want to get access to the CSS code that you need to paste to make URL buttons display as buttons. We'll also be able to give you a checklist of the configuration steps in this video and package configurations if you'd like to play with those. The configuration steps you need to actually take is first you need to create your custom URL field. We called ours action. Then you build the URL using the hyperlink function and get custom action URL to get the hyperlink for the custom action. Finally, you can make it dynamic using case statements and if statements as well. And don't forget, you need to paste the CSS into the global settings. Now, where else can you take this? Well, you can do a lot of things. You can make, most importantly, your user interface more intuitive. You can help users use the system better by showing them what they need to do by displaying a button or hiding it or showing on the button the action that needs to be performed. This reduces human errors and streamlines processes by making the whole thing more intuitive. It also is a great way to start implementing some project governance. A couple examples, you can drive project lifecycle like we did from phase to phase. You can manage workflow approvals through that process. You can constrain who is allowed to move projects from life cycles or advance through those workflows. You can also remind someone to take an action like submitting a status report or updating a risk or issue by showing them buttons when it's time for them to take actions. And those are just a couple ideas, but we would love for you to share with us how you use smart buttons and what you've been able to do with what we've shared today. And that's our mini masterclass on smart buttons. Please comment below. Let us know what you thought of our mini masterclass and what technical skills or cool solutions you'd like to see us cover in future mini masterclasses. Don't forget to sign up so that you can get the file download with the CSS code and configuration worksheet. And doing so will also sign you up to be notified when we release new courses, including our new Kolme Group University, which is coming out soon. Finally, if you prefer to have one of our Clarizen configuration experts help you out, give you one-on-one coaching, or help you with your specific configuration problem, please contact us directly at ppmanswers@kolmegroup.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.